Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. This is going to be another First Impressions video. In today's First Impressions video, we are taking a look at these XS flip-up sights. Before we get this video started, as always, there are links down in that description where you can support the channel. This is not a sponsored video, so if you guys want to help me out, you can click that very first link. It leads you to the Firearm Freedom merchandise store. On there, I have 8 brand new t-shirt designs that I know you guys are going to love, so definitely check it out. I greatly appreciate you guys repping the brand that is Firearm Freedom. Comment down below this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Those interactions should make sure that these videos do not get hidden from your subscription feed. Of course, full disclosure, what is my relationship with XS sights? They did send me these sights for free to check out on the channel. They did not ask me to do a positive review or pay me or anything like that, so of course we greatly appreciate XS sights for sending these out to check out and to get them on camera for you guys, and they just wanted to hear my overall opinions of the sights. I was scrolling through the XS website, just checking out the different sight options, and all of a sudden I saw these flip-up iron sights. And of course, I had to take a look at them on the channel. So the flip-up sights that you're getting from XS here are going to be aluminum in the construction of the body of the sight, so of course they're incredibly rugged, and then you also have a steel clamp on each side. So it's essentially like a bolt there with a claw underneath it that's going to clamp onto your rail, and that is steel. The body of the sight is aluminum, and they of course are flip down sights as well. These sights are actually, from what I can tell, made by Samson Manufacturing, and they make a bunch of really high quality parts primarily for the AR-15, but they also make some awesome stuff for the Mini 14 and the 1022 and a lot of other options. These sights are going to differ because it's a little bit of a combination of XS sights and Samson Manufacturing. It appears to me like they took the Samson Manufacturing base on these sights and then they kind of made their own XS sights top portion, which is actually pretty interesting. So one of the first things you guys are going to notice about these sights is the front sight here actually has an XS tritium vial. So that is pretty cool, and it's also kind of nice that it is painted white. Generally, what you're seeing on an AR-15 flip-up sight almost always is it's a blacked out front sight. Now, on a rifle, that's not necessarily the end of the world, but it is nice to have a little bit of high visibility paint, and if you are into a tritium front sight, if you're using the rifle in a little bit more dimly lit situations, a lot of the time night sights just aren't really necessary, but I find that in the kind of weird random situations it is a little bit nice to see that front sight glowing in the front of your rifle. One of the most unique things that I noticed about these sights and in getting used to them at the range is the rear aperture. So primarily I was using the large aperture in the back, which is just a standard circle, if you guys can see there, and I'm sure you'll be seeing in some back roll. That is pretty standard, and I really prefer that sight for just kind of up close range work and running around at the range anywhere from 50 to 25 yards or even 10 yards. That is a great aperture to have. But the XS sights actually come with this secondary aperture there, and that gives you a CQB 7-yard 0 here in the top. So you'll notice it almost looks like a pistol sight at the top. Now that is also serrated in the back, so it should help protect against any sort of glare. And then you also have a 100-yard 0 underneath that CQB section. Now I think that is actually pretty cool, pretty creative. So if you are going to a CQB situation and you're not using an optic for whatever reason, you just have iron sights, you have the ability to use that for fast target acquisition up close at 7 yards. And if for whatever reason you're transitioning, you now have a 100-yard 0 by just ducking your eye ever so slightly into that smaller aperture. Now, this, in my opinion, shooting at the range took a little bit to get used to. I'm going to have to do definitely a lot more dry fire. I'm not saying that it's bad at all. It's just not really traditional to me, and it's not something that I'm used to. So I found myself a lot of the time overshooting that rear section there, and all of a sudden my front sight was way up high, especially with dry fire practice, and a lot of the time I was going way too low. So I would bring my eye up and I would be seeing that front sight through the smaller 100-yard zero hole there. And of course, that's not what you want to do up close, because your rounds are going to be falling a little bit differently. So I think in theory, that's a really good idea. And with training and dry fire practice, it is probably something I'm going to get used to. But it is worth noting that it might take you a little bit. Of course, these are standard M4 height. If you wanted to use these on a different platform that's not an AR-15, you just have to keep that in mind. On an AR, these are going to be about the exact same height as, say, like a Magpul MBUS sight, and on your standard height optic, it's going to give you about that lower 1/3 co-witness, which I generally prefer. I'm not a huge fan of my front sight taking up the entire picture of the dot, so it is going to be pretty nice, but also that's going to depend on the optic height. And I do think these sights would work well on different platforms, and just cosmetically, if we're talking about the look of the sights, I do think they look pretty nice. Whenever you're looking at a metal sight, whether it's aluminum or steel, they just give you that awesome high quality appearance to the rifle. And of course, looks aren't everything. Standard polymer MBUS sights do just fine, and they're very cost effective. I have them on a lot of different rifles, but not only are you getting a rugged sight here, this sight breaks, your rifle is probably pretty broken as well, because it is going to be an incredibly durable sight, but it also gives you just a cool look at the top of the rifle. It definitely gives you something that is going to be a little bit different than what you generally see, which I really do like. Adjustments on the rear for windage are super easy. You have your windage adjustments here, so just by clicking those over, they're very tactile, very audible. And then for the elevation adjustment on your front sight, it is slightly different in the fact that it is just a 2-pin design there, but it does include a front sight adjustment tool in the packaging. So I don't know that a standard AR-15 front sight adjustment tool will work on that. It's similar in the way that it's designed, it's just slightly different. So you may want to use the front sight adjustment tool that they have. I actually found that these sights were pretty much zeroed out of box, which is cool. The rifle that I was sporting the sights on in this video is a 10.5 SBR build that I'm slowly building out here at the moment. It is a total hodgepodge, and the only thing I've done to this setup is put the rail on. This started its life as a 10.5 PSA, a bunch of different stuff going on here, but I've just been slowly switching out parts. Fun side note, this was the first time that I ran this suppressed, and oh my god, it is quite overgassed. So I was running it with a 30 cal can, so it should be less overgassed than a 5.56 can, but I had a standard carbine buffer in there, which is always how I recommend to start shooting a 5.56 gun suppressed and work your way up from there. With the standard carbine buffer, the bolt was flying home so fast that it was actually ripping off the rim of the casing and not pulling it out, so I was getting some stovepipes. I put an H3 buffer in there, or slightly below an H3 buffer at the range, and that definitely solved that problem quickly, but my brass was still ejecting at about the 12:30 position, 12:30, 1 o'clock. So this thing's going to need a little bit of gas mitigation work before we start running it, but that's all right. The primary reason why I was running these sights on this 10.5 build are I can really just see how these sights are working on a bone stock rifle. I have no red dot, I have nothing else, I just have these iron sights to help me out at the range. And you know, I have to say, in shooting, I really like them. They're pretty good sights, and they come up very quickly. One of the things that I noticed immediately about the front sight is these little arms here, and this is where it's going to differ from the Samson sights. The Samson sights have a more traditional kind of clamped-in HK style of the hood of the front sight. These are bowed out, and what you're going to get with that is a really nice and fast target acquisition. There's not a lot of things getting in the way and really clouding that front sight, which I like. And you do have a thin blade on that tritium, and with the white paint, these were very fast sights to pick up. And I think it's interesting that there's not more videos out there about these XS sights. I didn't even know that XS sights made standard rifle backup sights. So I was excited to do this video to kind of showcase them in this first impressions video. The one thing I will say is the price point is most definitely a little bit high. So for the pair of these sites, you're going to be looking at about $250 on XS's website. I'm not sure if you're able to find these sites elsewhere online at a cheaper price. $250 for backup iron sights is definitely a little bit steep. I would say for Magpul M-Bus Pros, you're probably at around the 180 to 190 area, depending on which ones you go with. But at the end of the day, those sights are also not going to have a tritium vial in the front, so that's always going to increase the price a little bit. I would say if these sights were around the $200 area, they would probably be a hell of a lot more popular and sell a lot faster. But nowadays, especially with the cost of materials and metal materials, that is always a little bit tough to ask for. Now, I don't think $250 is a price that is so hurtful I would not recommend them. I still think $250 is a reasonable price for these sights. It is just ever so slightly steep, in my opinion. That is going to wrap up this short and sweet first impressions video on these XS sights. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you have any other questions about these sights or anything else on the channel, you guys know to throw those questions down below in the comment section, and I absolutely will get back to you. While you're down there, head up to that description, check out those links, and as always, stay tuned for more great videos coming soon.